Picture this. It's a Tuesday night at a city council meeting. The room is packed. People are holding signs. A local politician stands up and says a single dog breed is so dangerous it needs to be banned outright, and every dog of that type currently living in the city will be confiscated. No trial, no individual assessment, just gone. Because of how they look. That vote actually happened. And the breed at the center of it was once called America's dog. This is the story of the American Pit Bull Terrier. How it went from war hero to public enemy. What the science actually says about its temperament. And the one fact about how these bans get enforced that almost nobody talks about. I'll get to that last one near the end. And once you hear it, the whole debate looks completely different. But first, let's go back to where this breed actually started. Because the origin story is not what most people think. The Pit Bull's ancestors came from England in the 1800s, bred originally from bulldogs and terriers. They were used to bait bulls for sport, and when bull baiting was made illegal in 1835, some people turned their attention to rat baiting, pitting dogs against one another to see which could kill the most rats in a given time, and eventually, to dog fighting. So yes, the breed has a violent origin. That part is real. But here's what most people skip over. Through selective breeding, bite inhibition toward humans was actually greatly encouraged. Gamblers had to be sure they could enter a pit and handle their dogs in close proximity without being bitten themselves. If a dog bit a human, it was usually culled. The whole point was that these dogs needed to be controllable by people, even in high-stress situations. Shortly before the Civil War, immigrants from the British Isles brought their pit bulls to the United States, and it was during this time that the breed was named the American Pit Bull Terrier. Though these dogs had been bred for fighting, they soon became a much larger and invaluable fixture in a developing nation. Frontier dogs that took on an all-purpose role. Farm work, herding, hunting, companionship. They were working dogs, and Americans loved them for it. Despite gaining an aggressive reputation in the 1980s, in the early half of the century, pit bulls were instead known for their loyalty and docile nature. They were nicknamed nanny dogs for their affectionate nature and watchfulness over children. A pit bull named Tige was the actual mascot for the Buster Brown shoe brand, used specifically because the breed represented loyalty and safety to families. Politicians, famous writers, and celebrities promoted pit bulls as America's dog. Some of the well-known pit owners in the early 20th century include Theodore Roosevelt, Mark Twain, Fred Astaire, and Humphrey Bogart. And then there's Sergeant Stubby. Sergeant Stubby was a heroic stray dog during World War I who became the first dog to be promoted to sergeant in the U.S. Army. He served as the unofficial mascot of the 102nd Infantry, 26th Yankee Division. After surviving a mustard gas attack, Stubby developed an uncanny ability to detect the gas before humans could, barking frantically to warn the troops. One day, while patrolling near the trenches, he sniffed out a German soldier mapping Allied positions. Without hesitation, Stubby lunged at the spy, sinking his teeth into the man's leg and holding him captive until American troops arrived. An act of undeniable valor that earned him a battlefield promotion to sergeant. After the war, Stubby met Presidents Woodrow Wilson, Warren G. Harding, and Calvin Coolidge, and was awarded medals for his heroism. His taxidermied remains are now part of the permanent collection at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. So that's the dog we're talking about. A decorated war hero, a family staple, America's mascot. The same breed type that, a few decades later, cities would be voting to wipe off the map entirely. So what happened? As dogfighting began to re-emerge in the 1980s, animal advocates put an increased focus on the cruel, illegal blood sport. The inadvertent side effect was that some people began to seek out pit bulls for illicit purposes. The criminal set began trying to squeeze these dogs into a mold they were never designed to fit. The breed that was once bred to treat every stranger like a long-lost friend was now being used as a guard and protection dog and fought in underground fighting rings. Then the media found the story. In 1987, Time magazine featured a pit bull on its front page with the title, "The Pit Bull Friend and Killer." The public became increasingly fearful of the dogs, and Sports Illustrated's "Beware This Dog" article further perpetuated the stereotype that pits were a danger to society. The pit bull, seen by criminals as items to be discarded, and now being seen by the public as a danger, began to fill shelters at an alarming rate. The media portrayal and demonization of the pit bull paved a perfect path for the onset of breed-specific legislation. The 1980s, which is when the pit bull panic started, were a hugely tense and socially tumultuous time. There was the disintegration of the inner city, a huge spike in violence, some scary stories cycling through the media, and a lot of fear-mongering. The pit bull got swept into all of it. What's interesting is that the attributes people really loved in the early 20th century were the same qualities found to be scary decades later. In the 1920s, the dogs were seen as loyal, tenacious, courageous, kind of unfussy, low-maintenance dogs. But by the 1980s, tenacious became never lets go, and courageous became vicious and frenzied. The dogs themselves didn't change. It was the stories being told about them that changed. And politicians responded to the fear, not the facts. Yakima, Washington introduced early breed-specific legislation in 1987 after 3 pit bull attacks made the news. The ordinance and litigation that followed was a prediction of the BSL landscape for the next 3 decades. Cities across the country followed. More than 700 U.S. cities eventually enacted breed-specific laws. Some places went even further. In the United Kingdom, the main piece of breed-specific legislation is the Dangerous Dogs Act of 1991, which makes it illegal to own any specially controlled dogs without specific exemption from a court. Countries like Australia and Italy banned ownership altogether. Now here's the one that really gets me. In 2012, a Maryland court took things to a completely different level. A Maryland court ruled that pit bulls, unlike other dogs, were inherently dangerous, thus increasing the owner's liability for their acts. The court's decision was later undone by the state legislature, but for 2 years, any dog with so-called pit bull genes was legally dangerous by default. No individual assessment, no bite history, just genetics. The fact that the legislature had to step in and reverse it tells you everything about how far that reasoning had gone. And this is where I need to stop and tell you about the thing almost nobody mentions when this debate comes up, because it changes the entire argument. The enforcement of these bans relies on visual breed identification. A person, often with no genetic testing, looks at a dog and decides whether it's a pit bull. A study conducted by the University of Florida found that 1 in 2 dogs labeled as a pit bull by shelter staff, including veterinarians, lacked any DNA signatures consistent with pit bull-type dogs. Half of the dogs being seized, euthanized, and removed from families under these laws may not have even been the breed in question. And the financial cost of running these programs is staggering. One county spent $560,000 enforcing pit bull confiscations in a single fiscal year while collecting only $35,000 in registration fees. The math doesn't work, and neither does the science behind the identification. There is no evidence that breed-specific laws make communities safer for people or companion animals. Following a thorough study of human fatalities resulting from dog bites, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention decided to strongly oppose BSL. After analyzing numerous controlled studies on breed-specific risk, the American Veterinary Medical Association found that pit bull-type dogs are not disproportionately dangerous compared to other breeds of similar size and strength. And 96% of veterinarians oppose BSL, with most describing their experiences with pit bulls as either positive or very positive. So what does the temperament data actually show? The American Temperament Test Society runs standardized behavioral assessments across hundreds of breeds. American Pit Bull Terriers pass at a rate of 85.3% higher than Beagles at 81%, higher than Collies at 79.4%, and higher than Chihuahuas at 71.1%. The dog that's been banned in dozens of countries outperforms several breeds that nobody bats an eye at. One cannot deny that when severe injuries or fatalities are evaluated, pit bull-type dogs are overrepresented. But this may not be due to breed, and instead due to popularity, the owner's behavior, and prior treatment by humans toward the dog. As a dog breed or type becomes more popular and is found in more households, bite incidents for that particular breed will increase. The locking jaw myth is another one that keeps circulating despite being directly disproven. Researchers who have studied the physical jaw structure of pit bulls found no mechanical or structural differences compared to other breeds, and no special locking mechanism at all. The jaw locks the same way every other dog's jaw locks, which is to say, it doesn't. While today, pit bulls are the likely subjects of BSL, throughout history, BSL has targeted other breeds like German Shepherds, Rottweilers, and Dobermans. In the post-Civil War era, bloodhounds were the dogs who struck fear in Americans' hearts, coinciding with the rise of newspapers. Then Nordic breeds became the dogs everyone was afraid of after newspapers ran stories about people being attacked by roving packs of huskies or malamutes in Canada. Around World War II, the most feared dogs were German Shepherds, Rottweilers, and Dobermans. The target changes. The panic cycle stays the same. And there's one more thing worth knowing about how some of these bans actually came to be. In at least one documented case, a city commissioner stated she didn't want those sorts of people, referring to assumed pit bull owners, moving into her community when the local ban was passed. The ban wasn't about the dog's behavior. It was about who the politicians assumed owned the dog. If you're finding this as wild as I did, drop a comment below. I want to know what surprised you most. If you're interested in more deep dives like this one, I'll be releasing new videos exploring the history and temperament of other dog breeds soon. Subscribe so you don't miss them. Now, here's where things actually stand today. Because the tide has been shifting. In 2020, Denver voted to repeal the city's 1-year-old ban against pit bulls by a 66% majority, a landmark outcome, as Denver's ban was the longest running in any major U.S. city. In 2024, Florida eliminated all BSL statewide in roughly 40 cities, including Miami, through Senate Bill 942, which passed almost unanimously. As of late 2025, there were no statewide breed-specific laws in the United States. In fact, some states prohibit such laws entirely, including Maine, South Dakota, and Utah. Public support for BSL has sharply declined, with most Americans now favoring fairer, more effective breed-neutral policies. When animal control resources are used to regulate or ban a certain breed, the focus is shifted away from effective enforcement of laws that have the best chances of making communities safer. Dog license laws, leash laws, anti-animal fighting laws, anti-tethering laws, and laws that require all owners to control their dogs regardless of breed. That's the consensus from the ASPCA, the AVMA, and the CDC. The problem was never the breed. The problem was always the ownership. So what does responsible ownership actually look like for a breed that carries this much baggage? It means early socialization, consistent training, and understanding that any dog, regardless of breed, reflects the environment it's raised in. A dog's behavior is shaped more by the training it's received and the environment in which it's been raised than by the breed itself. In most cases, the aggressiveness of pit bulls, like that of any other breed, is due to inadequate training, neglect, or mistreatment, not something they were born with. It also means knowing your local laws, because in some cities restrictions still exist, and being a responsible owner means being aware of that landscape. Here's where we started. A city council vote that could ban a breed overnight, based on how a dog looks. And here's where we ended up. The science doesn't support it. The identification methods are unreliable. The costs are enormous. The bans are being repealed one by one. And the dog at the center of all of it once caught a German spy in a World War I trench and got promoted for it. The same breed that's been called America's most dangerous dog was not that long ago called America's dog. Full stop. The dog didn't change. What changed was the story we decided to tell about it.